The margarine had a peculiar sharp taste tonight, as if something had got mixed with it, which was perfectly possible as Sister Anthony was absent-minded now, and short-sighted, and some believed malicious. The meal was eaten in the silence enjoined by the rule, but there would be plenty said about the Marge at a later date. The faces of Polycarp, Ignatius Loyal, and Cyril were twisted with the effort they made to hold back scathing speech. Their complaints rolled about their mouths like loose teeth. The next collation would be the last of the day, and it would be soup. Philomena imagined she could smell it already. She pictured herself in her place at table, for places never changed, unless someone came or went, or died, which would be more likely. Soon I shall be sitting here again, she thought, after the evening routine, after the hard kneeler in the convent chapel, directly behind Sister Cyril, after the sorrowful mysteries of the rosary and sundry other prayers, the nightly examination of conscience, the sign of the cross, then the kitchen to help Sister Anthony serve and collect my share of black looks and blame. Into the big blue apron and out with the tureen and the ladle. The usual draft rattles the windows as I step down the corridor to the refectory carrying the tureen, elbows jutting out. Bless us, O Lord, in these thy gifts. The small clank of the metal ladle on the side of each bowl, spoon raised to lips. She tasted the soup, a grayish, frothy liquid, over-salted, scraps of vegetables or perhaps peelings, awash in its depths. A violent pain in her ribs made her jump back, almost drop off the refectory bench. She stifled her exclamation. Why add another fault to the fault that Perpetua had just discerned? It was that rigid, cruel forefinger again, meant to wipe the expression off her face. She knew it must have been there, that blank, dreaming expression that Perpet took as a personal affront. Her brief absence of mind had put away the day as if she were folding it into a box, telescoped all the time between the bread margarine collation and the soup collation. But what did it matter? Certainly when time passed in the ordinary world at its ordinary rate, it would bring her to the same seat, the same spoon, the same sensation, the same salt and sour taste on her tongue. All her life was reducible perhaps to one long day, starting with the caller's Dominus Vobiscum and ending with private prayer before the crucifix in her cell, knees chilled by the linoleum. If every day from now on was to be the same, why have the days at all? Why not elide them somehow and live the next 40 years in a minute? She lowered her head, as if examining the grain in the wood of the refectory table. I have reached, she thought, a human being's lowest ebb. I have no curiosity about the future. I know what the future will be. The rule sets it out for me. She looked up at Perpetua, her present vision blurred, her eyes dwelling still on what was to come. And for the first time a thought occurred to her. Whoever regulates my future steals it from me. And if the future is predictable, does that mean it is planned? If it is predictable, is it in the least controllable? This is old stuff, she thought in disgust with herself. This is seminarian stuff. Is my will free? Outside the wind dropped. The nuns, draining the dregs of their tea, lifted their heads and looked at each other across the table. It was as if in the sudden silence they discerned a voice speaking out of turn. It was a moment of expectancy, unease. A curious ripple ran around the table. Overhead, the 40-watt bulb that the order approved flickered once, twice, 3 times, like St. Peter's denials of Christ. Then gaunt shadows turned their faces down and muttered a grace, then rose, as if in the grip of flames, and flickered from the room. The priests had eaten early. Hot pot. At least Father Angwin had eaten his. He did not know what Fludd might have done. It was the usual tale, a full plate, then an empty plate, and that discreet mastication in between quite insufficient to account for the disappearance of the curate's supper. Then, too, Father Angwin was seriously concerned about the level of the whiskey in his bottle. However much he drank nowadays, it never seemed to drop. Many of the night he had said to the curate, "We'll be needing a new bottle if we are to have a drink together tomorrow." But then he had contrived in the course of the day to dismiss the unpleasant fact from his mind. And in the evening there always seemed to be enough. Not enough to hold a party with, mind, not a quantity of whiskey, but a sufficiency. "This place has gone very quiet," Father Angwin said, helping the curate to a glass. "The wind has dropped." "No, I mean in general. It's since you came. You haven't, maybe without telling me, done a spot of exorcism." "No," Fludd said. "But I have been up and done a spot of minor repair work on the guttering. I take an interest in such matters. I was able to borrow a ladder from a pious household in Netherhofton, and I have consulted with Judd McAvoy about the downspouts. For a tobacconist, he is very well informed. He fears the church, too, needs quite extensive structural renovations, but he says it would cost a mint of money." "It wasn't the drips and creaks that bothered us, though," Father Angwin said. "We were accustomed to those. But we used to get feet walking up and down overhead and various banging noises, and you would feel that someone had come in, or the door would be kicked open, and no one would enter." "Well, I entered," Fludd said. "Did I not, eventually?" Agnes was of the opinion that the house was full of discarnate entities, of a malign sort. We hardly knew, but Agnes believes in a multiplicity of devils. In that, she is of quite an old-fashioned turn of mind. "Yes, I understand you. There is this lax modern way of talking about the devil. It surprises me. When you consider that for centuries some of the finest minds in Europe were occupied in counting devils and finding out their various characters. Reginald Scott, I think, towards the end of the 16th century, made it 14 million, give or take." "I can be more precise," Fludd said. "He made it 14,198,580. That excluded, of course, the lords and princes of hell. That was just the ordinary drone devils. But in those days," Father Angwin said, "if a devil put in an appearance, they had spells for binding him and questioning him and getting his name and number out of him. They understood very well that devils had their specialties, and that each devil was quite distinct in personality. St. Hilary tells us that each devil had his particular bad smell. But now people just say Satan or Lucifer. It is the curse of the present century, this rage for oversimplification. Sister Philomena told me," Fludd said, sipping his whiskey, "that she had encountered a devil as a child. She said that he was nothing like Judd McAvoy, but then, why should he be?" Father Angwin looked away. "I know that no one agrees with me in the matter of Judd, but you see, Father Fludd, we do not have the privileges of a former age. Devils do not so readily manifest themselves. Not within the range of our vision. Sister Philomena has been singularly fortunate. When she thinks of a devil, she can put a face to it. You have tried to do the same? Every devil must have a face, even if it's a wolf's face, even if it is a serpent's face, even if it is a tobacconist's. It must be something we can know and recognize. It must be in our own image or very close to it. It must be animal or human, or some hybrid of the two, because what else can we imagine? What else have we seen? Demonology, Fludd said, taking a sip. It is an unbearable subject. Deep and unbearable. Especially for you, Father, since you ceased to believe in God. If it had not been for McAvoy, Angwin said, looking away again, I don't know whether the notion of the devil would have such a strong grip on me either. My mind might have taken a secular turn. I might have become some kind of rational man. I have seen changes. Fludd followed the other man's gaze and looked into the fire. There was a time when the air was packed with spirits like flies on an August day. Now I find that the air is empty. There is only man and his concerns. Father Angwin sat hunched and brooding, his whiskey glass between the palms of his hands. The bottle was as full as ever. I am ill, he said. My soul chooseth hanging, and my bones death. My dear fellow, said Fludd, removing his gaze from the fire and fastening it anxiously on the priest's face. Oh, a quotation, Angwin said. A biblical quotation. The Old Testament, you know. Book of somebody or other. Fludd thought of Sister Philomena striding over the fields, failing to recognize his own quotations. When he thought of the nun, a soft, creeping uneasiness made itself felt. It was located in his solar plexus. Well now, he said to himself, I never knew that I had human feelings. He reached for his glass. I am like Father Surin, Angwin said. Forgive me, I never knew him. I mean, the exorcist of Loudon. Father Angwin rose, levering himself up with his hands on the arms of his chair. Fludd had noticed how in the short time he had been in the parish the priest's movements had slowed, and his animated features had become masked by a frozen disappointment and grief. He had carried on his pretense so well, so long, never by word or deed betraying the disillusion at the core of his priestly vocation. But my coming here has changed things, Fludd thought. Falseness can no longer be endured. Truth must not. There must be new combinations within the heart, passions never witnessed, notions never before formed. What was I saying? Angwin asked. Ah, yes, Father Surin. He went to the bookcase, took out a volume, opened it at a place he had marked. Quote, when I wish to speak, my speech is cut off. At Mass, I am brought up short. At confession, I suddenly forget my sins, and I feel the devil come and go within me as if he were at home. End of quote. I translate, he said. Freely. He closed the book and put it back on the shelf. Father Surin lost all consciousness of God. He entered on a state of melancholy. His illness lasted for 20 years. In the end, he could not read or write. He could not walk, and he had to be carried everywhere. He had not the strength to lift his arms to change his shirt. His attendants beat him. He grew old and paralyzed and mad. But he was cured, was he not? In the end? What cures melancholy, Father Fludd? Fludd said, action. At midnight, Fludd went out alone. It was cold, clear, still. The dried-up half-moon was skewered against the sky. The upper air was full of snow, the year's first. He could hear his own footsteps. He let his torch beam loose among the trees, then brought it back to his side as if it were a serpent he were training. The old wooden doors of the garage were quite rotten. They should have been painted, he thought, with some kind of wood preservative if they were to withstand the Featherhoften weather. There was a key somewhere, but he had not wanted to advertise his intentions by asking for it. He stood back and gave the door a good kick. Sister Philomena sat up in bed quite suddenly, as if she had been given an electrical shock, and her hair, what there was of it, rose on the back of her neck. She threw back the covers, put her feet on the chilly floor. When she stood up, a pain darted through her joints as if her bones were filed sharp. I am a wreck, she thought. Her ribs and shoulders still ached from Perket's recent assaults. She went to the small attic window and peered out. Not an owl, no nightbird, no storm, no lightning flash. She did not know what had woken her. Her window was at the back of the convent. Beyond lay the slumbering moors. Unseen but always present, like the life of the mind. The thought of the moors made her shudder. What anarchy in heaven the day those moors were made. Anything may happen, she thought. Her nape prickled again. She stared at the black treetops, but not for long. Miss Dempsey fumbled and found her candlewick bedspread. Her knees and her dressing gown draped decorously over the end of her bed. She pulled it towards her and, still sitting up in bed, wriggled her arms into it and fastened it across her chest. The room seemed more than usually cold. The brass-belled alarum clock said 12:10. Are they still down there carousing, she thought. Is that what woke me? Father falling over? If he has fallen over, she thought, he will need another cup of cocoa and strong admonition. That young little devil doesn't seem to have a need of sleep, or else he sleeps so sound in the few hours he takes that it does him more good than it does the rest of us. Miss Dempsey eased her feet into her bedroom slippers. They were the standard Featherhofton sort, with a nylon fur ruff of powder blue. They made no sound as she passed along the corridor and set them on the stairs. At the foot of the stairs, she stopped and listened, but there was nothing to hear, not the expected murmur of voices, nor the snoring of Father Angwin fallen asleep in his chair. She sensed at once that she was alone in the house, and this sensation was enough to send her, despite the cold and her state of undress, hurtling out of the front door and into the night. A dry leaf touched his cheek. Father Angwin stood A dry leaf touched his cheek. Father Angwin stood quivering, a fox at bay. Waking suddenly, he had scrambled from his bed and had pulled on his clothes, armed himself with the presbytery's other torch, and taken the stairs 2 at a time, impelled by he hardly knew what. And I said I was paralyzed, he thought. I told Fludd that soon I would need people to carry me about. He heard the dull grate of metal striking stone. Then nothing more, but a soft sound of funerals. Earth falling on earth with its familiar hiss. Yet not the sound of funerals, but anti-funerals. He approached the broken ground, the private graveyard that he had mentioned to Philly in the confessional, which he had offered for the use of her Protestant bones. Fludd, he saw, elegant back bent, digging like an Irishman. And as he watched, the curate stepped back and with a cavalier gesture, holding his spade at chest height, tossed the soil and gravel over his left shoulder. Holy God, Father Angwin said. He approached the excavation, his black feet sliding on the frosty ground. He flashed his torch beam into the hole. Would we have such a thing as a second shovel? Chapter 8. Torches were not enough, and when they had debated what to do, Father Angwin took from his pocket the key of the sacristy and handed it to Philomena. But I am not sacristan anymore, she said. Perpet took it away from me. Tonight is not an ordinary night. These are extraordinary circumstances. Agnes, go with her. Open the top cupboard on the left. You'll find 6 old candlesticks. Bring some of the big, tall, high mass candles. You know where they are. We'll plant them around the place. I have household candles, Agnes said. Don't waste time, Father said. Off you go. In the church porch, Philly gave Miss Dempsey her hand, feeling that she should somehow be the stronger of the two. The door into the church opened with its customary groan, like a jaded actor falling back on proven effects. You love detail like that. The door into the church opened with its customary groan, like a jaded actor falling back on proven effects. And they made their way together up the center aisle over the familiar stone flags, mouths open slightly, swallowing in the darkness. There was a moment when Miss Dempsey disappeared. Philly's stomach squeezed tight in sudden terror, and she clutched at the empty air. But the housekeeper was only genuflecting. She bobbed up again with a whispered apology, and they moved closer together and tiptoed on. In the sacristy, they spoke, short and to the point. Philly got up on a chest and unlocked the cupboard and found what Father wanted. She handed down the candlesticks one by one, and Agnes grappled them to her bosom and jiggled them to herself with an upraised knee. Philly jumped down and chose 6 candles from the box, running her fingertips over the arches of creamy wax. When they returned, Father Fludd was leaning on his spade. Father Angwin, like a sprite, sat cross-legged on the ground. He jumped up. Fiat lux, delve away, my boy. Fiat lux, delve away, my boy. Delve, D-E-L-V-E. Philomena knelt on the ground by the hole Father Fludd had made and put out one finger. Experimentally, as if the earth were water and she were going to bathe the baby. Below the loose surface, the soil felt heavy, saturated. She felt something move against her finger. As it might be, a worm. Oh, she said, pulling her hand away. The refinements of the convent parlor. Worm, she said. Don't frighten me, Father Angwin said. Fludd said, we see devils and serpents. We see serpents and worms. They are things within our common experience. Philomena glanced up. She imagined a skeptical, glittering expression in his eyes. Excuse me, sceptical, not skeptical. Philomena glanced up. She imagined a skeptical, glittering expression in his eyes, although really it was too dark to see an expression at all. Agnes Dempsey said, as for worms, we all know where they are coming from and going to. There was a silence. They looked down at the graves. Candle flames flickered in the air, doubling and bowing like genii let out of bottles. Their eyes grew accustomed to such light as there was, and they wished that they had not, for the priest, the nun, and the housekeeper were able to see in each other's faces a reflection of their own unease. When Philly explored again, she found something solid, thin, hard, and sharp. It's okay, you've done it, Father Fludd, she said. We're down to them. They weren't too deep at all. Without speaking, Father Angwin dropped to his knees beside her. He saw his breath, a smoky plume in the air. The snow above was too hard and cold to fall. If you could shake heaven tonight, it would rattle like a cradle toy. If you could shake heaven tonight, it would rattle like a cradle toy. The priest leant forward, one hand steadying himself, the other groping in the shallow pit. I feel it, he said. Father Fludd, I feel it. Agnes, I feel it. I think it is the edge of St. Cecilia's portable organ. Let me scrape with my spade, said Fludd. No, you might damage it, Father Angwin crouched, both hands dabbling and patting at what lay beneath the soil. Let me scrape with my spade, said Fludd. No, you might damage it, Father Angwin crouched, both hands dabbling and patting at what lay beneath the soil. If we are not to use the spade, Agnes said, the excavations will not be done by dawn. Miss Dempsey, you are ill protected against the elements, Fludd said. I did not notice when you so suddenly arrived. Should you not go back indoors and dress more sensibly? Thank you, Father, Agnes said. She blushed red under cover of the night. I have this warmish flannelette nightgown on underneath. She shivered, but she could not tear herself away. Philomena at least was properly dressed. When she had turned from the window of her room, excitement and fear had guttered inside her. A blaze about to start, but she must roll on those thick woolen stockings, pull on her drawers. Her heart pounding, she must shake out the 3 petticoats the order prescribed and lash them about her waist, knotting their sashes and strings. She must punch her arms through her stout, scratchy bodice, her cheeks growing hot, and fumble with her shaking fingers at the buttons at its neck. What a time it took! What an agonizing time! What an eternity! To climb into her habit, the black folds stifling and gagging her. Then her undercap with its drawstrings and the tiny safety pins to secure it. And all the time the knowledge of the necessary encounter, waiting out there in the frozen night. Fludd is adjacent. He is proximate. He is nigh. And here she juggles with her starched white outer cap, ramming it onto her skull, pressing it over the brows, feeling it bite into its accustomed sore groove on her forehead. And now she scrabbles for the long straight pins to secure her veil. And now she drops one and hears them, yes, in the midnight silence of the convent. In the midnight silence of the convent, hears a pin drop and roll. So now she must throw herself to her knees and pad with her hands and dab the floor under the bed, and then, rising successful, pin pinched between her fingers, catch the back of her head, a glancing blow on the under edge of the bedstead. Iron on bone. Sick, half stunned, emerging from under the bedstead on hands and knees. She must lever herself up and put on her veil, skewering it with the pins, and then seize up her crucifix and drop it over her head. Then lay hold of the long swinging string of her rosary beads and whip it out into the room and secure it around her waist. Then, the breath of the future misting the panes, the future grinning at the window, eager to have her in its jaws, she must bend again, dizzily pick up her shoes, pluck at the knots and the laces which, contrary to holy obedience and all the dictates of order she has left fastened the night before. Then, gasping with irritation, she must fling the shoes to the floor, work her feet into them still fastened, stamp and then jump them into place, thrust her handkerchief into her pocket, and then, only then, cross herself, murmur a short prayer for guidance, open the door of her cell, make her way along the passage, down the stairs and swerve sharp right, ignoring the big front door and through the passage to the empty, echoing kitchen. She had not dared to put on a light, but the moon from a clear sky shone through the kitchen window. A small, mean, wintry moon, palely gilding the ladle and the tureen, the up-ended pans on their rack, the jug standing ready for morning tea. She had tugged at the bolts of the back door and held her breath as she drew them back. Then she had pulled the door shut behind her and run out into the night. Now Miss Dempsey leant forward and put a hand on Philomena's shoulder to steady herself. Grunting with effort, the housekeeper got to her knees. Sucking her underlip, she put out her hands to feel the ground. I beg to differ, Father Angwin. I don't think it is the portable organ. I think it is the edge of St. Gregory's papal tiara. Let me at it, said Fludd. I won't smash a thing. You are both wrong, Philomena said. What you can feel there has no thickness at all. It is the arrow that pierces the heart of St. Augustine. We had better yield to Father Fludd, the priest said. 2 women and an aging fellow like me, what can we do against superior strength? Go at it, my dear. Move aside, sister, Fludd said. Unwilling to stand up and retreat, she remained on her knees and shuffled 2 feet to the left. His braced knee brushed her upper arm. He aligned the tip of his spade, and then she heard the sickening squelch and clatter, steel on plaster. He had driven it in, right by, she believed, St. Agatha's head, as if the Virgin were to be martyred again. Careful, careful, said Agnes, clasping her hands. Father Angwin breathed. Steady on. But Philly moved forward onto hands and knees, her eyes on the edge of the spade. She wanted to be the first to see, the first to catch a glimpse of the face emerging from its grave. Father Fludd planted his foot in the trench he had made. It was an inch, perhaps, to the left of Agatha's shoulder. He seemed not to feel her own urgency to uncover one particular set of features. His efforts were general, unspecific. But then she thought he did not know the statues, not as individuals. His curiosity did not focus on one or the other. Long before he came to the parish, they had been buried. St. Jerome, she whispered up at him. She pointed. Over there, uncover the lion. You should get up, he said, pausing for a moment, but not looking directly at her. You'll take a chill. Agnes, Father Angwin said, would it not be the best service you could render if you brought us cocoa? Fludd's spade scraped away. The tip of a nose appeared, startlingly white. Oh, I could not, Miss Dempsey said. Forgive me, Father, I could not leave now. Philomena launched herself forward once again. With her fingers, she scooped the earth away. It was Agatha, indeed. Philly pinched out the plastered cheekbones. She passed a finger over the sealed lips, then flinching over the painted retina. She da da be da 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 da. Shine your torch, Father Angwin, she said. She wanted to see the face. And as soon as she did so, she knew that this interval, this suspension, this barrel had brought about a change. She did not mention this change to the others. She realized that it might be something only she could see. But the Virgin's expression had altered. Blankly sweet, she had become sly. Unyielding virtue had yielded. She gazed up with a conspiratorial smile into heaven's icy vault. Soon they ceased to speak. The cold crept into their bones. They heard 1 o'clock strike. Bulky outlines were seen, still shrouded by the soil. Then parts of saints emerged, an elbow, a foot, St. Apollonia's pincers. In silence they recognized and greeted each one. When St. Jerome and the lion came out, Sister Philomena jumped into the trench, and Fludd paused, leaning on the spade, allowing her to clear the beast's features with her hands. Her feet slipped as she regained her place with the others. Father Angwin put out a hand to steady her, and she clung to him for a moment, leaning heavily on his arm, as if she were winded. Then Fludd stopped digging and said, Listen, somebody's coming. Who goes there? Called Miss Dempsey, introducing a military note, but without reply or preamble. The new arrival was upon them, transfixed for a moment like a rabbit in the beam of Father Angwin's torch, yet wearing an expression too smug, too imperturbable for a rabbit to wear. Then he shone his own flashlight right into the priest's eyes. It is I, Judd McAvoy. Good morning, Judd, Father Angwin said. Why are you out at this hour, if I may inquire? I have been down to Feather Hopton, Judd replied. I wanted a basin of peas. So that is what you have there. Yes. And fish, and my newspaper. I did not know the shop was still open at this hour. They fry very late these nights, to oblige anyone from up the hill who might feel peckish. We people up the hill are never early to bed. When the nights are long, we take advantage of them. Not you, surely, Judd, Father Angwin faced him across the graves. Surely you, a pillar of the men's fellowship, you don't go in for their rights. Oh, I am aware that you have your opinion of me, Father. Judd's tone was airy. You speak as if you mean to shame me into some admission, but when I say we, I speak of my neighbors. I speak of the Netherhoftonians. It was an expression, merely an expression. Would you like some of my fish? Be careful there, Father Angwin said. You've almost got your foot on Ambrose. Judd looked down. So I have, with a delicacy and sureness that suggested to Father Angwin that he was indeed of nocturnal habit. The tobacconist picked his way through the trenches. It is a pity I did not come on the scene earlier. By way of the footpaths, it is no distance to my home. I could have brought my own spade. Father Fludd has had everything to do. Why have you a spade, Judd? You have no garden. You forget, Father, that I was one of the allotment holders in the old days. Were you so? Then why could you not influence your brutish compatriots? Could you not turn away the raiding parties from their careers of crime and violence? Oh, I am not a man who would turn a person away from anything, Judd said. Or towards anything either. I am by nature merely an onlooker. This enterprise of yours, for example, this secret and private enterprise, I regard it with complete equanimity. You have not asked my opinion. I have not given it. Nothing would induce me to give it. I am one of the world's bystanders. I knew you were a devil, Father Angwin thought. Bystanders are an evil breed. They do say, Agnes put in timidly, that the onlooker sees most of the game. Quite so, Judd said. Miss Dempsey, I'm sure you will not refuse a piece of my fish. He unwrapped his newspaper. A delicious aroma crept out. Well, I am tempted, Miss Dempsey said. Sister Philomena, Judd said enticingly. Now, there is so little here that I am sure you could not offend the canons of your order. I'm starving, Philly said. McAvoy proffered the parcel. Father Angwin broke off a piece of fish. Soon they all ate, Father Fludd picking at a flake or two. It was cold but good. I wonder, Father Angwin said, whether it was fried in lard or dripping. He looked at Philomena inquiringly, but she would not meet his eye. His spirits rose. He felt quite jocular feasting like this in the presence of his enemy, and on his enemy's own supper. I wish we might have a fish each, he said, looking inquiringly again, but this time at Father Fludd. He wondered whether the curate might effect some sort of multiplication. After all, there was a precedent for it, but Fludd, though his portion had been smaller than any, continued to eat.